with my home church youth group, and as many of the young men in the church, ranging from from like 16 to all the way up to like 25, and we went on a trip down to East Tennessee to the Ocoee River in order to go on a whitewater rafting trip. And while we were there, we were staying in a little cabin. It was off the Ocoee. Where we went to go to the whitewater was much further down the river, but this was kind of a place there. Now, what was interesting about that is we had one guy named, I'll call him Matt this morning, and Matt didn't know how to swim. And I'm not judging anyone who doesn't know how to swim. I'm not here to make you feel bad for that, but maybe don't go on a whitewater rafting trip. I'll suggest that. Kind of dangerous. And so, and actually the story I want to tell this morning didn't happen during the expedition of going on the white water there. And instead it happened where we were kind of at a softer spot, a more calm spot of the river where our cabins were located. And they had a whole camping area over there, and you could go down, get in the river, and it was kind of a shallow point. And so most of the week it was going over to the river, much like you would off the Little Miami, kind of a canoe spot people put in there, and it was very kind of calm. And so we would, all week long, as we were there that week, we would just jump in, and it was kind of fun. You kind of ride it like a slide down about 10 feet, and then it would kind of just like level off to even more shallow area where you just stand up and go back up. And so all week you could see kids going down there, and then this group of young adults from Springfield, Ohio, hanging out there too, going down the river, just endlessly entertained. And so for most of the week, Matt was fine. Couldn't swim, but you could just stand up. It was kind of fun. You could sit down and kind of like let the water take you down, but then you could just stand up and walk away. But towards the end of the week, the longer we were there had been some rain, and that river level began to rise. And it rose so much that it looked like a completely different river by the time we ended the week. And it was one of the last days. We all went one more time over to the river to ride through. And we knew the water levels had risen, but we thought, oh, it'll be fine. We're strapping young men. We're gonna be just fine. And so we go and we ride down. Everything's fine. We can tell definitely things have picked up a little bit for sure, but it all seemed fine. Matt was kind of trying to find his footing as well, but it had risen to a point where we could no longer stand. That's how much it had risen at this point. And at one point we all got back into the river to do our thing, ride down, and then come back, walk back up. And it was different this time. It was different than earlier in the week. That water was much stronger. And it took us down. We kind of get past the point we normally would get out. We're like, oh, and we're all kind of laughing. And then we all try to start swimming to the side in order to get there. And if you've ever done that, we're kind of like, it's no longer a walk straight back. We're kind of like vertically. And as we keep going and going and going and coming down the way, and we're realizing we're caught in the current of this river and we're missing our spot. And our little camping resort thing, as you would imagine, it's on a river. And so if you go so far down the river, you're now outside of the grounds of where you're staying. And that's what ended up happening. And so all of us, including Matt, are now swept down the river. We have no idea where we are. We had a chaperone there who had brought us down. And he was not there with us today. Not a great chaperone. But he had brought us down from Ohio, and we had no clue where we were. This was before... everyone had, you had phones, but, you had smartphones, but wasn't exactly as great as technology today. And, that was back when I first started to drive. This was around that time. I used to print out, the printouts from Google Maps or some of the other Yahoo Maps or whatever at that time, some of the map quests and all that, right? I didn't have time at that point to go back, print out how to get back to this place. So we end up getting swept down to the river, through the river, and we end up looking up and we realize we're way past, like we can see we're way past the fence line of our resort, and we have no idea how to get back. And there's moments in that where then there's not much bank at all. It's kind of a high drop off. And so we don't know, okay, we can't just walk up. We're thinking we just walk up the bank, go along. But there really wasn't that option. It was kind of one of those river areas. And so we had to slowly, as much as we could get, we're on the bank, and then you kind of come up, and there's these little coves of water, and you kind of had to go through those, and it just looked snaky and everything you can imagine. And we had to end up making our way back along, kind of in the water, slightly on the bank, kind of holding on to the bank, like going up. And Matt is just terrified. I mean, absolutely terrified. And we're looking at him and say, hey, we're gonna have to make our way back up. And he doesn't want to move, doesn't know how to swim. And we're sitting there trying to coach him to get back up, and he's refusing. We're like, listen, Matt, choices were made, okay? And this is the situation we're in now. You're going to have to go with us. We can't just leave you out here, okay? And anyways, long story short, we end up making our way back. We end up having to go on other land and then jumping a fence to get back to where we needed to go. It was kind of scary stuff. But have you ever found yourself in a situation like that? What we might call a hopeless situation? You know, in our case, we get swept down the river, have no GPS. Of course, we don't have our phones on us. You know, we've been in the river, no one to call. End up getting way past our point of exit, not knowing where we are, not having any way to contact anybody. But have you ever been in a situation like that in life where it just seems hopeless? There's nothing you can do. Maybe it's in an entertainment kind of situation like I've just described. Maybe you're on vacation and things just seem it's kind of like the movie RV, like everything just seems to be going wrong and you're so far from home. When things go wrong at home, you kind of think, okay, I can get my bearings, I can figure this out. But for some reason, when we're away and we're traveling, it becomes a little harder. Or maybe it's a little bit more serious where you're facing a situation at work and you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel for this project to end or to figure out how to work effectively with this boss or this team. Or there's conflict and you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel for how this is going to resolve. Or maybe it's facing a situation with your health. And you're assured over and over again that there's ways forward, but it certainly doesn't feel that way. And you struggle to envision what health can look like. Or maybe it's a situation where you faced your own sin and you messed up. You made a mistake. And the path to repentance or reconciliation or making things right, you can't see it. You don't know how things will ever be restored. Imagine we have all found ourselves in a situation that seems hopeless. And sometimes it's not anything to do with us, like some of the situations we've described, but maybe it's contingent on other people's actions. And sometimes that's what makes us feel most hopeless, when there's nothing we can do about it. And this morning, when we look at the story of the Israelites and the story of Exodus, they find themselves in a really somewhat hopeless situation. If you remember last week, we talked about the story where God was bringing judgment down on the Egyptians. He was using his mighty hand to have this sort of arm wrestle with Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's mighty hand, which was this imagery in ancient Egypt. But God ends up bringing Pharaoh to his knees through those 10 plagues, and Pharaoh finally says, I'm fine, I'm fed up, get out of here, leave. And that's exactly what they do. And so the Israelites get up and leave. And in fact, some of the Egyptians, we don't really know why. Perhaps they saw how oppressed the Egyptians were, but it says God turned their heart to favor the Israelites, and they give them all sorts of supplies and things for the road and some money for along the way. And they take off and they go. And after, as you imagine, there's hundreds of thousands of Israelites. This is this isn't just a little youth group trip down to Tennessee to the Coe River. This is massive. Like a city is getting up to move out of this metropolitan area and going out into the wilderness. This was a huge feat. And after they left, we don't know how much time, but after they left, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and his advisors realized they messed up. Or at least we know, of course they didn't mess up. They made the exact right decision, but they, in their minds, decided they had messed up. And why was that? It says, when the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds. Why did they change their mind? God brought them to their knees. Why in the world would they stand up and oppose God once again? And it says, because they said, what have we done? We have let the Israelites go, and we have lost their services. They realized we're losing what they were giving us. And it's not logical, because God had brought them to their knees. Yet here they are again saying, no, but we liked what we were getting from oppressing them. As you can imagine, in many abusive relationships, that may be how it goes. When there's this cycle of repentance, or I'm sorry, or I shouldn't talk to you that way, and then there's, but we kind of come back to it, but I get something from that. And that was true. It's true for a lot of oppressive societies. It's true for oppressive relationships. And it was true here for Pharaoh. That he was just so set on just milking the Israelites dry and getting everything he possibly could from them. And so the Israelites, they look, as they're in the wilderness, escaping from Egypt, they look back. They think they're going to be free, but they look back and they see Pharaoh, who has now gathered his army together to go pursue the Israelites and to either destroy them or to bring them back. And as you would imagine, and as we see here, they were terrified. It says, as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were Egyptians marching after them. And they were terrified, and they cried out to the Lord. And just like us, they find themselves in this hopeless situation. I mean, what hope could you have? You're this people who are not trained for battle. You're out in the Egyptian wilderness, and now the world's superpower's military is pursuing you out in a desolate land, and it seems like there's no escape. And to add to that, as we're going to see in the text, they also find themselves landlocked with the Red Sea, which we'll say a bit more on in a moment. But God, through Moses, answered the people, do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. And the Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. And as the Israelites are fleeing, they're running, they're in this moment being terrified, being followed by the Egyptians. And not to make light of it, but have you ever been like driving around before and you kind of sense someone following you? You think like the car behind you is following you, and then you think, okay, I'm going to test this out. I'm going to make a turn here, and if they turn here, they're 100% pursuing me. And then you make the turn, and then you see their turn signal go on. You start like freaking out even more and going, like that feeling. And of course, it's never anyone actually following you, unless you cut them off, and that's on you. But that's the thing. You actually cut someone off, and then you think, oh, they're going to pursue me and follow me home, and you're like, turn, or where am I going? Well, the Israelites are stuck. They're landlocked with the Red Sea, and they're terrified. And here's what God says to them. Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance. And in one sense, he's telling them, if it's left up to your own devices, this is a hopeless situation. Like there's nothing you can do, but you need to stand firm. He doesn't tell them, trust in yourselves. I've prepared you for this moment. That's not what he tells them. Instead, he says, you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. And the Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. And then this is what he tells them. He says, the Lord, Yahweh, will fight for you. You only need to be still. That is not easy. Especially, you put yourself in the shoes or the sandals of the Israelites as they're traveling along in the wilderness, and they see this world superpower pursuing them, coming after them with all of their military might. And Moses tells them, be still. Well, what do we need to do to get out of this situation? Be still. Can we gather together our resources and figure out a way to have this sort of Minuteman militia and fight back? He tells them, be still. Is there a way we can get around the Red Sea in time? There were other routes, but you've led us here to be landlocked. And Moses says, be still. The Lord will fight for you. What I know about human beings like you and me, and I know this because I know this about myself, is that this does not come naturally to us. To allow God, this invisible being, to fight on our behalf. We want to take things in our own hands. We want to figure it out. We want to use our resources to cash out and to get ourselves out of difficult situations. And there's times in our life where that's acceptable, that's good. It can be good stewardship. It can be good planning. It can be good wisdom. But there's sometimes when our backs are against a wall or a sea, and there's nothing we can do about it. We feel hopeless. And Moses says, be still, right? Stop striving, stop stirring, stop hustling, stop trying to fix everything yourself. Instead, be still before the Lord because he's going to deliver you. Now, about this sea that they had their backs up against as they see this superpower coming towards them, we call it the Red Sea. And that's what it's been traditionally called. However, when you look back at the original Hebrew, that's not the name of it at all. It's the Sea of Reeds. Now, why might that? So it's not actually not the Red Sea, it's the Reed Sea, if you will, R-E-E-D. Now, over time, through different translations, it's been traditionally translated as the Red Sea. You can look up and see resources on that all over the place. But what's significant about that is, do you remember how Exodus begins? When Pharaoh had decided that he was going to kill all the Hebrew boys when they were born, he commanded the Israelites that if you have a boy, you're to cast it into the Nile River. And then this young Hebrew couple, they have a child, and they decide they're going to subvert Pharaoh's plans. And they're going to set him in a little ark, a little boat, and he's in the Nile. And do you know where? Then, if you remember in the story, Pharaoh's daughter ends up subverting Pharaoh's plans and ends up discovering this little boy who's in this little makeshift boat. Do you know where she discovers him? Among the reeds. And she calls him Moses, because she's drawn him out of the water. This is what the word means, to draw out. And now here they come. And the imagery is not to be mistaken, it's not coincidental. They find themselves in the Sea of Reeds. Takes us instantly back to the beginning of Exodus and what Pharaoh had done so long ago to those little boys. And then God tells Moses to do something phenomenal. Doesn't make sense. It's really weird. But I think when we see the context here, we will understand. He says, Moses, stretch out his hand. If you remember, this is all about God stretching out his hand to the Israelites. That language is used all throughout Exodus. The imagery of Pharaoh was one of an outstretched hand in front of his rule. And so Moses, he says, stretch out his hand over the sea. And all that night, the Lord drove the sea back with an east wind and turned it into dry land. And get this language, and the waters were divided. And when the waters were divided, it created a way. It created a dry path for the Israelites to walk through the Red Sea and onto the other side. And that's what it says. And it's just this imagery of Moses with these outstretched hands in the water. Brian's right. That'd be an amazing thing to witness. The power's not in Moses, but it's in him. God using him as his vessel to outstretch his hands and to provide this way for the Israelites to escape the wicked hands and the mighty hands of the Egyptians. And it says, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground with a wall of water on their right and on their left. And this language of the waters being divided and the dry ground appearing, this should, as many scholars have said, and one scholar from the Bible Project, Carmen Imes, says that the biblical authors trigger echoes from the creation narrative, depicting the Exodus event as the creation of a new people. And as the Israelites pass through, the waters divided, create a way of life, a path of life for the Israelites to pass through on dry land. God is creating something new, and it's foreshadowing to what is to come. Now, you would think that the Egyptians would count their losses at this point. They've experienced 10 plagues from God, one worse than the first, one worse than the one before it, over and over and over again. And now they see this amazing miracle where the Red Sea, and by the way, you think, well, that doesn't happen today. Well, it certainly didn't happen then either. and this amazing miracle that they're witnessing. And you think the Egyptians would know when to stop, but they don't. And they actually pursue the Israelites. The Egyptians pursue the Israelites into the water. And you think they'd stop. Hey, this doesn't normally happen. and what God has done to us over and over again in Egypt, maybe it's not going to last. But instead, they take the risk and they go and to pursue the Israelites. And then through that, it says that the Israelites pursued them and Pharaoh's horses and chariots and followed them into the sea. But then God commands us. The Israelites have made their way onto the other side. Moses then stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back into its place, and the Egyptians were fleeing towards it, and the Lord swept them up into the sea. And you have this amazing moment where this story isn't just random, but it takes us back to the story at the beginning of Exodus, where Pharaoh had wickedly and in an evil way had killed all these Hebrew boys by casting them into the Nile, among this Nile River with all these reeds. And now in the Sea of Reeds, you have the Egyptians' army, the Pharaoh's army being swept away as God brings the waters back together, and once and for all. And this idea of waters divided, waters together. When waters divided, there's life. When waters are brought together, there's chaos, right? In creation, the waters are divided and dry land appears where life then can thrive. In the flood of Noah, God brings the waters back together, causes chaos and destruction and judgment. And so this act that God did here was a final judgment on the chaos of the Egyptians, and in bringing them to final judgment, and an ironic reversal of what they had done at the beginning of this book. That is our God. And the way that he works and the power that he has, that he brings kings to their knees. And when he's challenged, he takes care of the rest. And so the Israelites then are on the other side. They've witnessed what God has done. They see that he has delivered them from the Egyptians, their enemies. And do you know what the result is? Their response to this is? Their response is to worship him. As they finally see with open eyes that Yahweh is who he said he is. And that Yahweh is the creator of all things. As they see this undeniable miracle, you see some of the plagues that these sorcerers of the day were able to mimic. Many of them they were not. But this one was a very clear, like this is amazing, this is undeniable. And the response of this was worship. And this is what they said. And this is much of the point of the book of Exodus in the story. They responded in worship and song. In Exodus 15, it says, "Who among the gods is like you, Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working in wonders?" You see, through all of this, God was revealing himself to his people, to Pharaoh, to the Egyptians, and to the world. And we established that last week. And now, at the other side of the Sea of Reeds, or the Red Sea, you have the Israelites fully acknowledging and committing themselves to that truth. And as they say as throughout the song, in verse 13, it says, "And in your unfailing love, you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling." See, this is not a God who's constantly angry at all people, but this is a God who holds people accountable, and we see that. But ultimately, God draws his people out of the water, and he draws them into his love and into relationship. And if we jump further than this story goes today, it's saying God's going to use this people to bring blessings to all people, to draw people in to him. And that starts on this day, when God sets them free from Egyptian slavery, delivers them from the Egyptians, brings them through the Red Sea, and their response to that is worship. So this morning, are you in a hopeless situation, maybe today? In a room of this size, no doubt, there's someone going through something difficult, someone going through something really hard. And as you look around the room today, there's a lot in this room who can relate in some way, because we've all been through hard things. We've all been in impossible, even hopeless situations. Whether it's a mistake you made and you don't know how to recover it, whether it's a bill that's come in, you have no idea how you're going to have a way forward. Maybe it's a sickness you're facing and you just can't see and envision what this looks like in the future. Or this is a pressing situation you have where you know you need to speak up, you need to act, you need to do something, but you know there's consequences from wickedness and evil, the evilness of this world if you were to be faithful in various situations. Are you in a hopeless situation this morning? Are you in need of deliverance? Because when we're in those situations, we've always got that temptation to try to figure things out on our own, to put it on our own shoulders, to do it alone. But instead, what God calls us in those moments is to not be overcome by fear, but to be still before the Lord and trust Him. And to trust that He has put people in your life and other disciples of Jesus in your life to help bear that burden with you. And I hope you find that in this room. But even when you don't see it, God is working. He is working on your behalf. He is bringing you through something difficult, something hard, something painful. And we can't pretend like everything's going to be as it was before, because it's probably not. But we have to trust in Him that on the other side of whatever trial it is that you're going through, that it's something better and it's something for your ultimate good, even if that's not the way that we sometimes define good. But trusting God as our Father, that He has our best interest in mind. And even when it seems impossible, God will make a way. Because that's who God is. That's who Yahweh is. When it seems impossible, He makes a way. Jesus, our teacher, our Lord, would later say, with men, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. He will make a way for you. May not be what you expect, may not be what you've prayed for, but He will make a way. Because that is who He is. And this morning, we're going to sing a song, a new song. It's been practiced a lot. But I want to read those words to you now, the chorus of the song we're about to sing. It says, and you are way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Who among the gods is like our God? No one. Yahweh is unique. He's our promise keeper, light in the darkness, miracle worker, way maker. That is who He is. If you have a need this morning, you've got something you're carrying, something you're struggling with, I encourage you, there's going to be some of our elders at the end of service in the prayer room. If you exit on my right here, and you'll find them there. Go there, be with them, help them shoulder that struggle with you, and I'll tell you what they're going to do. They're not going to be able to solve things for you, and they're not going to be able to figure it all out. They're not going to be able to hustle with you to, there might be some things they can help with, might be able to point you in some directions, but what they're ultimately going to do is they're going to point you to the God who makes a way. And if you're here today and you want to respond publicly, we invite you to do that as well as we sing about the God who makes a way for us. Will you come as we stand and while we sing?
You are here.